Good morning, students. Today we are going to learn Standard 9 Political Science. Students, we will continue learning with chapter number 4, the United Nations. Students, in the previous part of the chapter, we have already studied about the process of the establishment of United Nations, the main objectives, its principles, and also the structure of the United Nations. The United Nations has six main organs. They are the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, the International Court of Justice, the Trusteeship Council, and the Secretariat. In the previous part of the chapter, we have already studied in detail about the meaning and important functions of two organs of United Nations. The two organs about which we have studied in detail are first the General Assembly and second the Security Council. Students, today in this video, we are going to learn in detail about the remaining four main organs of the United Nations. Also, we will study about the participation of our country India in the working of the United Nations. So now, let us begin with the third organ of the United Nations, that is the Economic and the Social Council. Students, the main objective of the Economic and Social Council is to coordinate or to help the United Nations in framing the policies related to economic and social importance. The Economic and Social Council has total 54 members. All these members are selected by the General Assembly. The elected members enjoy a tenure of 3 years. That is, they are elected for a time period of total 3 years. Every year, one-third of the members are newly chosen because the old members retired. In simple words, we can say that every year 18 old members retired and new members are being chosen in their place. Thus, the process of election of new members goes on continuously each year. The decisions in the Economic and Social Council are taken by voting system, and the decision which gets a majority of vote is being finalized. Thus, if more than half of the members vote in favor of the decision or in support of the decision, then that decision is being passed or finalized. Now, let us study about some of the important functions of the Economic and the Social Council. It is one of the main responsibility or the function of the Economic and Social Council to initiate or to begin discussions at the global level on some important issues such as poverty, unemployment, economic and social inequality, etc. Students, poverty is defined as the people don't have enough money to afford or purchase the basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter. Unemployment is the situation where the qualified or the professional people are unable to find proper jobs. It is arised when there is shortage of jobs and the number of educated and qualified people are more. Now, you all know that due to this corona pandemic, many of the people have lost their jobs. This is termed as unemployment. Students, Economic inequality means creating inequality or doing discrimination on the basis of the earnings of the nation based on high earning country and low earning country. Also, social inequality or discrimination is seen on the basis of their standard of living, their earnings, their level of education, etc., among the people of the country and also among the member countries of the United Nations. Thus, it is the important function of the Economic and Social Council to discuss on such issues and also to suggest some policies to tackle or to overcome such problems. Students, discussions are also held on other issues such as the women's questions, in which the problems or the situations in which the women are being exploited or being fooled are being discussed. Also, discussion is carried out towards empowerment of women, human rights, fundamental freedom, global trade, health related issues, etc., and some proper decisions are made on such discussions. The Economic and Social Council also makes efforts towards establishing a cultural and educational cooperation at the international level among all the countries in the world. Also, the Economic and Social Council coordinates with the functioning of the different organizations which are working in association with the United Nations. The Economic and Social Council helps all such organizations in working smoothly for the betterment of the world. Students, now let us study about the fourth organ of the United Nations, that is the Secretariat. Students, Secretariat is the post of any person or the office as a whole who is completely responsible for all the administrative, clerical, and the secretarial work of the United Nations. Currently, Mr. Antonio Guterres is the Secretariat of the United Nations. He works in the headquarters of the United Nations, that is in New York. Now, let us study about the Secretariat responsibilities and important functions. The Secretariat has the responsibility of carrying out all the administrative tasks of the United Nations. Students, the chief of the Secretariat is the Secretary General. He is being selected by the General Assembly and the Security Council. The tenure of the Secretariat is for 5 years. Now, let us study about the important functions of the Secretariat. The Secretariat has the power to call international conferences to discuss on global problems such as the climate change, human rights, disarmament, etc. The next function of the Secretariat is to organize all the meetings of the General Assembly and the Security Council. Thus, it has to inform all the member countries of the UN regarding these meetings. Also, the Secretariat has to keep a complete record of all the information about the global changes happening and also about the points or the discussions held in the meetings. It is also one of the important functions of the Secretariat to supply information to the media regarding the work of the United Nations for the common people to understand about it. Now, let us study about the International Court of Justice. Students, the International Court of Justice is also known as the World Court. It was established in the year 1945. The role of the International Court of Justice is to settle the legal disputes between the member countries of the United Nations. The International Court of Justice is the judicial branch of the United Nations. All the judicial work or the work of providing justice to its member nations is carried out by the International Court of Justice. The International Court of Justice is located at The Hague in the country of Netherlands. Its working began from the month of April in the year 1946. At present, there are a total of 15 judges in the International Court of Justice. All these judges are chosen by the General Assembly and the Security Council. Each judge of the International Court of Justice has a tenure of 9 years. That is, if the judge is been selected for the International Court of Council, then he will have to work as a judge for 9 years. Now, let us study about the functions of the International Court of Justice. One of the important functions of the Court of Justice is to settle the disputes in between two or more member nations of the United Nations. The next function of the International Court of Justice is to interpret, that is, to check or to verify and suggest changes in the international law. The International Court of Justice also advises the various organs or the other organs such as the Security Council, the General Assembly, etc. regarding the legal issues. The International Court of Justice also advises and helps the subsidiary bodies of the United Nations. In short, all the work related to legal matters is being done by the International Court of Justice. Students, the sixth and the last organ of the United Nations is the Trusteeship Council. After the Second World War, there were some territories which were completely undeveloped. The responsibility of developing such territories was placed with the developed nations. It means the developed nations were supposed to bring about the development in all those undeveloped territories and also to help such territories or those nations which were under the rule of some other nation. It was the responsibility of the developed nation to help those nations to attain their independence and also to help them to establish democracy in their territory or their country. All this work of the developed nations to help the undeveloped nations in the world was carried out by the Trusteeship Council. Since now there are no territories which require freedom from other countries, the work of this Trusteeship Council is over. The work of the Trusteeship Council was ended when Palau got independence on 1st November 1994. Students, Palau is an island in the Pacific Ocean and it is at a distance of 500 meters towards the east from the country of Philippines. Palau was the last country who was under the domination or the rule of any other country. As soon as Palau got its independence and democracy was established there, the work of the Trusteeship Council was officially and finally ended. Students, now let us discuss about the Millennium Development Goals of the United Nations. Students, millennium means a time period of 1000 years. From the year 2000, a new millennium, that is the 21st century, was started, and thus in the same year, that is in 2000, the United Nations member countries or the members decided to come or state the development goals for the upcoming new millennium. Some of the important goals to be achieved by the United Nations for its countries or its members in this millennium are to eliminate or to remove poverty and hunger, to make the facilities of primary education available to all the children, to bring about women's empowerment in all the sectors of the society, to reduce the infant mortality rate. Students, infant mortality rate means the death of a newborn child before the child completes 1 year. Such deaths of newborn childs should be reduced because this newborn child is the future of our world. Also, it was one of the goals of the United Nations to take special care of the health of the pregnant women, to fight disease against AIDS, malaria, etc. Another goal of the United Nations was to protect the environment. This was one of the important goals. Also, the next goal was to increase the cooperation in between the developed and the developing countries. Due to this increased cooperation, the developing countries will also get the help of the developed countries, and even it will reach its development. A specific time period has been decided to achieve all these goals of the millennium. Our country, India, has made considerable progress in the direction of achieving these Millennium Development Goals, and the organizations of the UNICEF and the UNESCO have helped India towards achieving these goals. Students, UNESCO and the UNICEF are the organizations which are affiliated or in contact with the United Nations and help the United Nations in fulfilling its development goals. Now, let us study more about these two organizations. UNICEF. The full form of UNICEF is the United Nations Children's Fund. It is an affiliated organization with the United Nations. The work of UNICEF is towards making nutritious food and healthcare facilities available to all the children. Several workshops are being organized by the UNICEF in India to find out about the measures or the important ways to overcome the problem of malnutrition among newborn babies and young children. Thus, in short, we can say that the UNICEF is related with the health and betterment of the children. The next organization is the UNESCO. It is the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organizations. It is also affiliated to the United Nations, and it helps or it works in coordination with the United Nations. The UNESCO work towards improving or providing peace and security in the world by promoting the cooperation among the member countries of the United Nations in the field of education, science and culture. The United Nations and preservation of peace. Students, it is one of the main objectives of the United Nations to settle all the international conflicts or disputes peacefully. The United Nations Charter has included some of the ways to be used in achieving this goal. These ways include appointment of an intermediary, use of legal procedure, appointing an arbitrator to solve the dispute, or if needed to recourse the military means to ensure that such conflicts will not occur again. In today's modern times, the human security has been threatened by terrorism, racist, and also with the religious conflicts. Students, you all know that many of the countries in the world, including our country India, is facing the problem of terrorism through terrorist attacks. Racism means the discrimination in the people on the basis of their physical appearance. It mostly includes discriminating the people on their skin color, that is, the white people and the black people. And religious conflicts means the problems or the conflicts arose due to the difference in the opinions or in the different culture of different religions. As a result of such problems, the human security is being threatened or the human security is in danger. Thus, the function of establishing and securing peace of the United Nations has acquired a lot of importance. The United Nations makes continuous efforts to ensure that violence does not erupt in the strife-prone areas and normalcy is restored as soon as possible. It means the United Nations carry out various functions to make sure that the area or the place which is already been affected by any major violence does not face such problem of violence again, and the life of the people living there is soon resorted to its normal life. For bringing the people's life back to normalcy after violence, the United Nations take efforts such as starting school, creating awareness among the people about their human rights, making social, economic and the political facilities available to all the people, conducting elections, etc. The peacekeeping activity of the United Nations. The peacekeeping activities of the United Nations involve all those activities which it has undertaken for creating an appropriate circumstances which are favorable for bringing about permanent peace in these strife-prone areas. There are special peacekeeping forces which help the people living in the strife-prone or the violence-affected areas to progress rapidly towards establishing peace again. In the conflict-ridden areas, proper security is provided, and at the same time, help is also extended for establishing peace in such areas. The United Nations take up peacekeeping as one of the important tasks which is required for safeguarding and fostering peace in the world. There are some actions which are taken by the United Nations as a part of the peacekeeping activities. They are prevention of conflict and mediation, actually establishing peace, implement of measures of protecting peace, and peace building. Such measures help the United Nations and its other member countries to establish peace and bring back the people's life to normalcy in their area. Students, now let us study about the United Nations and our country India. India has participated in all the different conferences that were held before the establishment of the United Nations. It means before the actual formation of the United Nations in 1945, there were various conferences held to discuss regarding the formation and the structure of United Nations. Our country India was at that time under the rule of the British government. Thus, the British government India and afterwards the independent India had actively participated in all the conferences of the United Nations. India has actively participated in bringing up or highlighting the issues such as decolonization, disarmament, racial segregation, etc. on the United Nations platform. Decolonization means granting freedom to all those territories or the colonies which are under the rule of any other country. Thus, after gaining independence or freedom from the British rule, India aimed at providing freedom to all those territories or the other countries which are still under the rule of other countries. Disarmament means reduction or decrease in the military power or the military forces which are imposed in any other country. Racial segregation means to avoid or to stop the discrimination which is based on the racism, that is, discrimination based on the physical appearance of the person. In the year 1946, India was the first country in the world who have raised the question of racism in the United Nations. Even today, in many countries, the people are being discriminated on the basis of their color, that is, the white people and the black people. Thus, India has raised this issue of racism in the United Nations. Also, India has always led towards the discussions about the problems of the undeveloped and the developing countries. Also, India has sent her troops or the military forces to participate in the United Nations peacekeeping forces. In order to support the women empowerment, India has sent an all-women peacekeeping force as well. Thus, from all this foregoing analysis, it is evident or proved that India is making serious efforts to solve the international conflicts by the peaceful means. So students, this was all about United Nations and its 6 main organs. I hope you have understood the chapter very well. Thank you.